Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Shantae and this is Booked with Shantae. Today we are going to be discussing my March reads, so let's go ahead and get into it. March was a pretty good reading month for me. I read a total of 9 books, and for the most part, they were all pretty highly rated in my opinion. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first book, which is The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. So this book follows two teens from two different cultural backgrounds as they have a chance encounter one day in New York City. Our female is a very science and facts-based individual, and our male character is a hopeless romantic, and he has a love for poetry. What I really like about this book is that although on the surface these two seem to be completely different, the more we learn about them, they're actually dealing with some of the similar things, just maybe in different ways. I really enjoyed how this book discovered coincidence versus what's meant to happen is going to happen. And I also like how the romance was slow. So we really got to learn them as individuals. It wasn't just an instant love, even though this all took place in one day. We got to see them build a friendship. They showed each other different parts of their world. And there was just a lot of depth to their conversations. It was an easy read. It held my attention. I wanted to keep learning more about these two and see what happened at the end. So that led me to giving this a 5-star rating. I also watched the movie once I finished reading the book, and it was a great movie. It didn't take away from the book at all. I know sometimes the book is so much better than a movie or a TV show adaptation that it kind of ruins the reading experience, at least for me, but this didn't do that at all. There were some details in the movie that differed from the book, but I feel like it wasn't that big of a deal to where it's like, oh my gosh, this is totally different. If anything, it really just enhanced my reading experience. So I highly recommend watching the movie in addition to reading the book. The next book I read was Dating After the End of the World by Geneva Rose. This book is a post-apocalyptic romance that follows Casey, who is our female lead character, as she heads back home during the end of the world. Her father has always been a doomsday prepper, so he was essentially prepared for this moment. So she knew that she could go back to her father's compound. During her childhood, she spent a lot of time helping him prepare. So she was digging stuff, building walls and fences and all of the things. So this led to her being bullied throughout her school days. And when she gets to her dad's compound, she's met with aunts, uncles, cousins, and one of her high school bullies is there as well. So throughout the book, they work together. I think one of her best friends from school is there as well. So throughout the book, it's just them working together. And then obviously this turns into an enemies to lovers romance. Typically, I don't think this is something that I would read, but I really enjoy Geneva Rose's writing style. I love how conversational it is, and I feel comfortable reading her books. So I figured I would give this one a try. And what I especially liked about this book is how Casey, our female lead, was portrayed as just a strong woman. She didn't back down. She wanted to be out in the field with the guys. She was really tough, and I really appreciated that in a female character. I also really enjoyed how this was a found family type of dynamic. Again, we had her aunts, uncles, cousins, her friend, her high school bully, and then I think a couple of other people that were friends that made their way to the compound once everything happened on Doomsday. So it was just really fun and funny seeing the banter and all the different personalities being forced together. It was a light read. It was an easy read. It held my attention. It was a page turner for sure. So I gave this one a 5-star. And I also want to mention that if you have seen the TV show on HBO, it's a series on HBO called The Last of Us, then this book is pretty much just like that. When I was reading this book, I kept thinking about the TV show just for like visual purposes. So if you've seen that show and you enjoy that show, then I definitely think this would be a book that you enjoy as well. The next book I read was a highly anticipated book and a book that was talked about by so many people, and that was Keeper of Lost Children by Sadiqa Johnson. And I'm sure most people know what this book is about, but if you don't, it's about mixed race children that were left in Germany who were born to German women and Black American soldiers during or after World War II. These children, a lot of their mothers just couldn't keep them for societal reasons, financial reasons. It wasn't really accepted to have a mixed child in Germany back in those days. And their fathers, due to just the way the world was and laws, they had to leave and couldn't take their kids with them. A lot of them weren't able to get married. And so it was a lot. And I really appreciated the education behind this book, because when we're learning about World War II, this is something that is never discussed. So that leads you to never really thinking about it or considering that something like this actually was going on and was a real issue. I really liked how in this book we got 3 different perspectives. I really felt for each of the characters in a different way. I don't think there was one that there definitely wasn't one that I disliked, because they were each going through their own struggles at different time periods of this. And one of the characters, Sophia, she was a teenager, and I think her story stuck with me the most, just because reading about the 60s from the perspective of basically a child and seeing everything she dealt with, how she was bullied, all of the nasty slurs, like, this book made me mad. It made me sad. It gave me all of the emotions. This book was an easy 5-star read. I highly recommend this to everybody, whether you like historical fiction or not. At the end of the day, it is also very educational. I was Googling different locations, different terms, different phrases, just to get more information. I highly recommend you read this, if anything, just for the educational purposes of it. The next book I read was Finding Me, which was Viola Davis's memoir, and I loved this book. I primarily listened to it on audiobook, and I'm glad I did, because as I was listening, it felt like I was sitting and having a personal one-on-one conversation with her. It was really inspiring just listening to her story and learning about her childhood and all of the battles and the struggles she faced and how she really overcame those things. She had all the strikes against her, but she was determined from a young age to be different and have a different life than she was accustomed to growing up around. I also really enjoyed learning about the things she went through once she did get into acting. And she doesn't have the typical look or the typical style that Hollywood, especially back then, would have wanted. So it was really interesting seeing how she broke all of the glass ceilings and just overcame and just wowed everyone. And now she is just such a household name, and her look and her style is what makes her who she is. We know when we see a Viola Davis movie that she gonna be bodying that character, okay? So I just really enjoyed hearing more of her journey. Again, I am not one to want to rate a memoir and judge someone telling their life story, but this is an easy 5 stars for me. She did a phenomenal job, and this is another one that I would recommend to you if you are a Viola Davis fan or a fan of her work. I think you would really enjoy this one as well. So the next book I read, I needed something a little more lighthearted after reading Keeper of Lost Children and then going into Viola Davis's memoir. Those books both just really pulled at the heartstrings and just really left me thinking and feeling a ton of emotions. So I'm like, okay, I need something a little lighthearted. So I decided to read Losing Sight by Tati Richardson. And this book is about a sports reporter named Nikki, and she is dealing with aging in the world of sports journalism. So her sight is going bad, and this leads her to Gideon, who is an optometrist, and he is also a widow. What I really enjoyed about this story was the unique storyline. We have mature characters who, on the romance scale, have kind of been there, done that. Things aren't so instant. They're not making these quick, immature decisions that have us looking at them like, okay, like, that was dumb to do. They're in their 40s, so they're established in their lives, in their careers, and the romance isn't the only thing that's talked about. We dive really deep into Nikki's career as a sports reporter. There are times when she goes on the road for her job, so we're taken along along that journey as well. She has a really tight-knit group of friends that they call the Boss Chick Village, so we get a lot of insight into that. I just feel like this was a really nicely well-rounded book. It's like the romance was there, and this was a romance book, but we got to learn about the individual of it all as well. So this was a really light and easy read. It was funny, it made me laugh. So I gave this one a 4.5 stars. There is also a second book coming out later this month that follows the storyline of one of her friends. So I'm super, super excited to get into that one as well. So this next book was not a part of my reading plan for the month. It's called The Trainer by Tanisha Stewart. So I'm just gonna read the real quick summary because it was a really short book, and I feel like if I were to explain it, it would pretty much be telling everything in the book. A woman trapped in an abusive relationship joins a kickboxing class as a potential escape, but her trainer's harsh methods and dark secrets complicate her plan for freedom. So the reason I read this is because I needed an audiobook to listen to while I did my daughter's hair one weekend. And I made a post on TikTok, and a couple people suggested this book to me. They said that the audio was really good, really immersive. So I decided to check it out because audio, I'm real picky about my audios, and they were not lying. This was a really immersive read. We had the whole production, honey. They had different emotion in their voice. We had background sounds. We had like transition music. They did that with the audio on this, so I have to give it to them for that. The storyline itself was really good as well. It was sad, of course, so you want to check the trigger warnings. It was about domestic violence, and they went into great detail about it. But it was just interesting following the story of these two women and seeing how everything unfolded in the end. The ending, it was satisfying. It wasn't what I was hoping. It was almost what I was hoping, but it was satisfying in a good way. So yeah, I suggest this book. It was really, really quick. I think the audio was only 4 hours. I'm not sure how many pages it was, but the audio was 4 hours long. So this is a good one if you're doing a task, just need something to listen to that'll keep you interested and focused on what you're doing. But yeah, I gave this one a 5 stars just because, again, the audio was perfect, it was immersive, and the story kept my attention. The next book I read was Dear Vicky by Octavia Grant. This also was not on my list, so I'm gonna read the summary because, again, it was real short. I think it was like 70 pages, so I don't want to give away the whole story by telling you what it was about. The main character is a bagger at a grocery store. He develops a delusional relationship with a customer that leads to a dangerous obsession. So again, this was a super quick read, less than 100 pages, but this book was a lot. It was a lot for sure. It was super unhinged, which I guess was the point. It went deep into the obsession and delusion of it all. And the whole time I was reading it, I was like, this is actually pretty scary that there's people out here probably exactly like this in the real world. Like, that's scary to me. And there were even parts in the book, I'm like, okay, Octavia girl, like, where was your mind at when you were writing this? Because this book was crazy. With that being said, I don't know if I'm necessarily the audience for this. Again, it dove deep into like obsession and delusion. It was very gory, I guess is the word. I don't typically lean towards books like that, but it kept my attention and I had to see it to the end. I had to see how all of this wrapped up. So for that, I did give it a 3 star. It wasn't bad. Again, I just don't think I was necessarily the target audience. And it was completely unhinged, which again, I think is the point of the book. So it definitely did its job. So 3 stars for me. The next book I read was My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney, another highly anticipated book. I think everybody in the thriller community, booktok community has read this at this point. So I definitely had to make sure I got to read it as well. This was definitely a page turner and the twists were twisting for sure. There were times I feel like it might have been twisting a little bit too much. It started off really, really strong and I was immediately hooked in, but there was a point where I felt like it got to be doing too much and I personally started getting a little bit confused. I did switch to audio about halfway through because I wanted to be immersed in it to see if that would help my confusion. And honestly, this is one that I could definitely see myself rereading in the future. And I probably do need to reread in the future because this is one that you really got to be paying attention to. Like, I got to the end and I know what the ending said and I know what the ending was, but I'm still kind of just really confused on how everything played out as far as them, at the end, kind of playing everything back, explaining how everything ended up to be what it was. And also, I think this book was so hyped that my expectations were like literally up here. And I think it kind of ruined it for me because since it was so hyped, I went in kind of thinking one way and having these high expectations. And so me personally, I was a little bit let down because I feel like it didn't live up to the hype. But again, I think I just need to reread this. So that could be a user error on my part. I did give this a 4-star because again, I did like the overall story. It captivated me from the beginning and it was a page turner, and I am willing to reread it to figure everything out. So I did give it a 4-star. I didn't think it deserved anything lower than that, especially because I think maybe me not understanding was just my own problem. But yeah, definitely worth checking out for sure. And the last book I read was Next of Kin. I just did a reading vlog on this because I was in a race to finish this before the month ended. So Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young is about two strangers who are paired to live together as a part of a CPS initiative so that they can gain guardianship over their siblings. I really like this book, and I absolutely loved all of the themes that were explored in this book. We have disability representation, found family, and of course that forced proximity relationship trope. I enjoyed reading the dynamic of all of the characters. So Chloe, she is extremely independent. She's a people pleaser. Warren, who's our male lead, he is very grumpy, but at the same time, he's also very protective. Luke is Warren's brother. He is deaf. And then Chloe's sister is a newborn that she is trying to get custody of. So I just loved seeing the dynamic of all of them together. They both had a lot to them. They both had a ton of trauma from the past. I just feel like the relationship part of it was a little bit rushed. I wish we could have explored them kind of getting to know each other a little more. They initially butt heads again because they just had so much trauma. And again, you're two strangers, you're coming together, very different personalities. So there was a little bit of friction there. And so I feel like we went from that to I love you very quickly. I wish we could have built a little more in terms of the relationship, but overall, really enjoyed the storyline itself. I love how unique it was, and I think this author focuses on underrepresented characters in her romances. So I will definitely be checking out more of her books. So I gave this one a 3.5 stars. All right, you guys, that wraps up all of my reads for the month of March. I can't believe March is over already. I feel like I say this every month, but the books I read in the beginning seems like I read them like forever ago. But I have some really exciting reads coming up for April. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.